It was a normal morning in the city. People walked fast, cars honked, and the sun was just starting to shine over the tall buildings. Inside a busy bank, staff were laughing, typing, and moving papers around. Everything seemed normal, but something special was about to happen. The glass door of the bank opened slowly. A young black woman stepped inside. Her name was Ava. She looked around with calm eyes. She had natural curly hair, tied back in a soft puff. Her clothes were simple and neat, a plain white blouse and black pants. She wore old shoes, but they were clean. She held a small brown handbag in her hand. Her walk was confident, but not loud. Her face was peaceful, but there was something strong behind her eyes. Ava walked up to the front desk. "Good morning," she said in a kind voice. "I would like to open a new bank account, please." The woman at the desk looked up quickly, gave a fake smile, and said, "Take a seat. Someone will help you." Ava thanked her and sat down. But as she waited, she noticed something. People were staring. One young man behind the counter pointed at her hair and whispered something to his coworker. The coworker laughed. Another woman, who looked like a manager, shook her head and gave Ava a quick look from head to toe. Ava sat still, her hands on her lap. She heard a few words behind her. Why would she come here dressed like that? Maybe she's lost. Look at that hair, wild. Ava closed her eyes for a second and took a deep breath. She had heard things like this before. But today, she was not going to fight. She was going to watch. Finally, a teller called her name. "Miss Ava, counter 3. Ava stood up and walked to the counter. The teller was a young man with slick hair and a loud voice. He looked at her and smiled, but the smile did not reach his eyes. "Yes, how can I help you?" he asked. "I would like to open a bank account," Ava repeated gently. The teller looked at her clothes, then at her face, and then at her hair. "This isn't a salon, it's a bank," he said, chuckling. His voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. A few people around the room heard it and laughed. Ava blinked once. Her face did not change. She simply smiled and said, "Thank you for your time. I'll be back soon." The teller looked confused. "You're not opening an account." "Not today," Ava replied calmly. She turned around, walked out slowly, and pushed the glass door open. As she stepped outside into the sunlight, her face broke into a small, quiet smile. She didn't look angry. She didn't look hurt. She looked like someone who had just learned something very important. Inside the bank, the teller rolled his eyes. "What a weirdo," he said to his friend. "She probably doesn't even have $5, the friend replied. They both laughed. But none of them noticed the man standing across the street. He wore a black suit and dark glasses. He held a folder in his hand. As Ava walked toward him, he gave her a small nod. Ava said one sentence. "Everything is ready." The man replied, "Yes. Final papers are signed. Your first visit went just as expected." Ava looked back at the bank and whispered, "Good. Let's see how they act when they find out who I really am." She smiled again, but this time it wasn't soft. It was powerful. The day after Ava visited the bank, things went back to normal. At least, that's what the staff thought. But one thing stayed fresh in their minds. The woman with the curly hair. She looked like she came from a village, one teller joked. More like from the street, the other laughed. The whole staff room buzzed with rude jokes and giggles. Ava's calm smile and soft goodbye didn't make sense to them. Why didn't she react? Why didn't she shout back or complain? She was probably embarrassed, the manager said with a smirk. People like her don't belong in banks like this. Everyone laughed. They didn't know someone was listening. In the corner, a quiet janitor stood with his mop, wiping the floor. He heard everything, but said nothing. His eyes narrowed, and he shook his head softly. That afternoon, the team got an email. It was from the bank's head office. It said, Important notice. A new CEO will soon visit our branches for a surprise inspection. Please be professional, respectful, and kind to all customers. The visit could happen any time this week. The mood changed immediately. The same people who had laughed at Ava now started fixing their hair, cleaning their desks, and practicing fake smiles in the mirror. "I bet it'll be some rich old man in a suit," said one of the cashiers. "Maybe we can impress him and get promoted," said another. But deep inside, some of them were nervous. The warning in the email felt serious. Why now? Why suddenly? That evening, Ava sat in her small apartment with her laptop open. She was in a video call with a team of serious-looking people in suits. "All reports are in," one woman said. "The bank branch failed our mystery guest test. Staff showed clear bias." "Perfect," Ava replied softly. "Make the next move." She closed her laptop and looked out the window at the city lights. Her reflection showed her natural curly hair, glowing in the light. "They laughed at my hair," she whispered, "but soon they'll respect every strand of it." 2 days passed. The bank staff remained on edge. Every time the door opened, they froze, expecting a rich, powerful man to walk in. But no one came. So they relaxed again. The manager started joking again. "Maybe the CEO forgot about us." The others laughed. They had no idea what was coming. One night, a black luxury car parked across the street from the bank. Inside the car, Ava sat in the back seat, holding a folder with the bank's name on it. Her hair was still natural. But now she wore a dark blue business suit and shiny black heels. Her eyes were sharp. Her smile, calm but firm. A man sitting next to her said, "Are you ready, ma'am?" Ava nodded. "Yes, let's remind them who they really work for." The next morning, the bank was busier than usual. Staff moved quickly, straightening papers, smiling at every customer, and pretending to be helpful. Then the glass doors opened. A woman walked in. Her heels clicked against the floor. Her curls bounced gently. Her suit fit her perfectly. It was Ava. But this time, something was different. She wasn't carrying a small handbag. She was carrying power. Staff stared in silence. That's the same woman," whispered one teller. "Is it really her? She looks like a boss." The manager walked over with a fake smile. "Good morning, miss. Can I help you?" Ava didn't smile. She looked straight at him and said, "No, but I can help you. I'm your new CEO." Silence. No one moved. The same staff who laughed at her just days ago were now frozen in shock. Their eyes widened. Their mouths opened, but no words came out. The woman they mocked, the woman they judged, the woman they laughed at, was now their boss. And Ava, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't insult anyone. She just looked around slowly and said, "Last week, I came as a customer. I wanted to see how you treat people who look different. Now I know." Her voice was calm, but it cut deeper than any shout. "Some of you laughed. Some of you whispered. Some of you made jokes about my hair. But today, I stand before you, not to punish, but to teach." The entire staff stood in silence. One teller looked down in shame. Another had tears in her eyes. The manager was pale, his hands shaking. They had never felt so small. And Ava, she stood tall, just like her beautiful, natural curls. The air inside the bank was still. No one moved. No one spoke. Ava stood in front of the staff, her calm voice still echoing in their minds. "I'm your new CEO." The manager's hands trembled as he tried to speak. "Why you're the new CEO." Ava looked at him without blinking. "Yes," she said, "and I came last week as a regular customer, just to see how your team behaves." The same teller who mocked her hair was now silent, his eyes wide. He looked like he wanted to disappear. Ava slowly walked past each counter, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. She paused at the front desk where the receptionist had given her a fake smile last week. The receptionist lowered her head. Ava didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The weight of her presence said it all. Later that day, Ava entered the manager's office. She sat down and opened her laptop. The manager stood nervously near the door, not knowing what to do. Ava finally spoke. "I've reviewed this branch's performance for the past year. Profits are fine, but your service is broken." The manager tried to defend himself. "Ma'am, I'm sorry about what happened. My staff didn't know." Ava raised her hand. "That's the problem. You treat people well only when you know they're powerful." Her eyes locked onto his. "But what about the old woman with the heavy bag? Or the immigrant father who can't speak English well? What about them?" The manager swallowed hard. He had no answer. Ava closed her laptop and stood up. "Send an email to all staff. Tell them to gather in the main hall in 15 minutes. The staff gathered slowly. Some were scared. Some were embarrassed. No one smiled this time. Then an email popped up on everyone's screens. Subject: New CEO announcement. Mandatory training begins today. Message: Dear team, our new CEO, Ms. Ava Brooks, has taken charge of this branch. Starting today, all employees will go through 3 levels of customer care and sensitivity training. Those who fail to show change will be replaced. Respect is not optional. Head office. The room went silent again. The staff stared at their screens. No one dared to speak. Ava walked into the hall. She looked at each person, her face unreadable. "You laughed at me," she said softly. "But I didn't come here to laugh at you. I came here to fix this." One young female teller burst into tears. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to be rude. I just thought you were." She stopped. The words felt ugly now. Ava nodded slowly. "You thought I was nothing." The girl looked down and cried harder. Ava placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I forgive you. But this change, it has to be real." Over the next few hours, something amazing started to happen. Ava sat with each team, listened to their stories, and asked hard questions. Have you ever judged someone by how they looked? Did you ever treat someone poorly because they spoke differently? Would you talk the same way if the customer was your mother or your child? Some employees cried. Some stayed quiet. A few walked out of the room, unable to face the truth. But Ava stayed strong. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here for justice. That night, Ava sat alone in her new office. The lights of the city blinked outside the window. She opened a new email on her screen. It was from head office. "Congratulations, Ms. Brooks. We're already seeing change. The staff respect you deeply now. Let us know if you need support for the next step." Ava smiled. The next step. She clicked reply and typed. "Next, I want to bring in people from the community, those who were once ignored. They will be treated with honor, and some of them will become our future leaders." She pressed send. At that same moment, the bank manager sat at home, reading the email again and again. Those who fail to show change will be replaced. He wiped sweat from his forehead. He wasn't afraid of Ava anymore. He was afraid of losing everything. The story of Ava Brooks began spreading fast. On social media, someone posted a photo. Bank CEO surprises staff after being mocked for her hair. The post went viral. People shared their own stories of being judged, ignored, or laughed at because of how they looked. A new message started to rise. Respect starts with seeing people as human. And it had Ava's face at the center. The next morning, sunlight poured through the large windows of the bank. The staff walked in quietly. No one laughed. No one gossiped. The energy was different now. Everyone had read the email. Everyone knew the truth. Ava Brooks was now their CEO. And she wasn't like anyone they had ever worked for. At exactly 9:00 a.m., Ava walked into the hall where the whole team waited. She wore a dark green dress and simple gold earrings. Her hair was still natural and curly, full of pride. Her presence filled the room, even without a single word. "Good morning," she said softly. "Good morning, ma'am," the team replied in one voice. Ava nodded. "Thank you for coming. Today, I want to tell you my story." The staff looked at each other. Her story. Some leaned forward. Some sat up straight. No one wanted to miss a single word. Ava walked to the front of the room and began. "I wasn't born rich. I wasn't born powerful. I was born in a small town where people didn't expect girls like me to go far." She paused, her voice calm but full of emotion. "My mother worked 2 jobs. My father passed away when I was 10. We had no car, sometimes no electricity, but my mother always said one thing: respect yourself, even when others don't." The room was silent. The same people who once laughed at her were now hanging on every word. Ava continued. "I studied at night with a candle. I read library books during lunch breaks. I walked for hours to reach school. One teller covered her mouth with her hand, eyes wide. I was always told I was too loud, or too black, or that my hair was too wild. Teachers told me I would never be more than a cashier." She looked around the room. "But I kept studying. I got a scholarship. I went to college. Then I worked at a bank as a cleaner, just like the janitor you ignored last week." Everyone turned to look at the janitor standing quietly near the back wall. He nodded once, a proud smile on his face. Ava took a deep breath. "Step by step, I moved up. I worked harder than everyone. I learned about business, finance, leadership, and finally, I became one of the youngest executives at head office." The manager swallowed hard. He remembered calling her a weirdo behind her back. And then, Ava said, "I was given this branch. But before I arrived as CEO, I came as a customer." She smiled slightly. "And you all showed me exactly what kind of service you give to people who don't look rich, don't look perfect, and don't wear fancy clothes." No one could meet her eyes. Then Ava picked up a stack of papers from the table beside her. "These are real complaints from customers who felt ignored, judged, or mistreated here in the last year." She held up a paper. "One woman came in wearing traditional clothes. You made fun of her." She held up another. "A young man with a speech problem asked for help. You laughed when he stuttered." Ava looked around slowly. It wasn't just about me. It was about all of them. Tears rolled down the cheeks of one staff member. I didn't know we were making people feel that way," she whispered. Ava nodded. "Most people don't. That's why I'm here, not just to lead, but to teach." She walked closer to the team. "You don't need to be rich to deserve respect. You don't need to dress a certain way. You don't need perfect English. Every single human being who walks into this bank deserves to be treated with kindness." The staff sat silently, ashamed, but also inspired. They had never heard a CEO speak like this. They had never met a leader like Ava Brooks. And now, they were beginning to understand just how powerful she really was, not because of her title, but because of her journey. After a moment, Ava smiled. "And here's the best part," she said. She pulled out a new paper. "I'm starting a new program. We will be offering free training and internships to people from the local community, especially those who've been ignored." Some eyes lit up. "We'll look for kindness, honesty, and hard work, not just college degrees or fancy resumes. And guess what?" She paused, then said, "One of those new interns might sit in my chair one day." The room erupted in soft claps. For the first time, it wasn't just about fear or shame. It was about hope. The bank was changing, and Ava was leading the way. That evening, as Ava sat in her office, the receptionist knocked and entered shyly. "Ma'am, may I ask something?" Ava smiled. "Of course." The receptionist whispered, "How do you stay so calm?" after how we treated you." Ava stood and walked to the window. "I remember how it felt to be invisible," she said. "That pain taught me strength." She turned and looked the young woman in the eyes. "And now, I use that strength to make sure no one else feels invisible." A week passed since Ava Brooks had revealed she was the new CEO. The bank looked the same from the outside. But inside, something had changed. The staff spoke softer, listened more, and helped customers with more care. At least, that's how it seemed. But Ava knew, true change is not proven by words. It is proven when no one is watching. It was Friday morning when the test began. Ava arrived early and called the manager into her office. "I want you to take the day off," she said. The manager looked surprised. "But why, ma'am?" Ava gave a calm smile. "Because I need to see what happens when I'm not here." He understood. Slowly, he nodded and left. At noon, a woman entered the bank. She was in her mid-40s, wearing old clothes and broken sandals. Her hair was messy. She carried a heavy shopping bag that looked like it was tearing at the sides. She walked slowly, nervously, looking around like she didn't belong. The receptionist at the front desk looked at her and hesitated. In her mind, she heard Ava's voice. "You don't need to look rich to deserve respect." She stood up, smiled warmly, and said, "Good afternoon, ma'am. How can I help you today?" The woman looked shocked. I just need to cash a check," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure if I'd be welcome here." The receptionist walked out from behind the desk and helped guide her to a chair. "You're very welcome," she said. "Let me get someone to help you right away." In another corner of the bank, a young man walked in. He was wearing a hoodie and had headphones around his neck. Some of the older staff looked at him suspiciously. He looked out of place, but one of the tellers took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Hi there, sir," he said kindly. "Need any help today?" The young man removed his headphones and smiled. "Yeah, I'm trying to open my first account. I've never done it before." The teller smiled back. "No problem at all. We'll walk you through it." Behind a large window upstairs, Ava sat quietly, watching everything. She was in a small hidden observation room, connected to the security system. She saw everything, and for the first time, she smiled with hope. But the real test hadn't happened yet. Later that afternoon, two women entered the bank together. One of them was well-dressed, holding a designer purse. The other was her maid, wearing plain clothes. They walked to the counter, and the well-dressed woman said loudly, "She's here to cash her pay. Can someone handle it quickly?" Some staff members looked confused. Should they speak to the rich woman or the maid? A junior teller stepped forward and looked directly at the maid. "Ma'am," she said kindly, "may I see your ID and check, please?" The maid's eyes widened. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. She handed over the papers with shaking hands. The teller smiled and helped her gently, without ignoring or rushing her. From behind the glass, Ava felt her heart grow full. At 4:30 p.m., Ava finally stepped out of the observation room and walked into the main hall. The staff gasped in surprise. They hadn't seen her all day. Ava looked around and asked, "How was your day?" The receptionist replied nervously, "It was good, ma'am. We had a few new customers." Ava nodded. "I know," she said. Everyone looked confused. "I was watching. I saw the woman with the torn bag, the boy in the hoodie, the maid with the check." She paused. "And I saw you." She pointed to each staff member who had done the right thing. "You didn't wait for instructions. You didn't look for power or beauty. You simply showed respect." She stepped closer and said softly, "This is what I came here for." Suddenly, Ava held up a golden envelope. "I have an announcement," she said. The room went quiet again. She opened the envelope and read, "Starting next month, this branch will be promoted to Community Excellence Pilot Bank. It will receive new resources, new hiring programs, and one full scholarship to a top finance college for one staff member of my choice. Gasps filled the room. Ava looked at the young teller who had helped the maid. She handed her the envelope. "You passed the biggest test," she said. "You treated a poor woman like a queen." The teller shook with emotion. I don't know what to say." Ava smiled warmly. "Just keep being you." That evening, as the staff locked up the bank, they felt different. Not because their CEO was watching, but because they were starting to watch themselves. And Ava, she stood outside under the evening sky, looking up at the stars. She whispered softly to herself, "Change doesn't happen when you walk in. Real change happens when you're not there, and the goodness stays behind." Customers were smiling more. Staff were working together like a team. People from the community felt safe and welcome. Ava Brooks had done something powerful. She didn't just change the bank. She changed the hearts inside it, but not everyone was happy about it. Far away, in a tall glass building at the city center, a man named Mr. Ronald Gray stared at a report. He was one of the top regional directors at head office, and he wasn't pleased. Training poor people, giving scholarships, smiling at customers who looked like beggars. He scoffed. He threw the paper down on his desk and called his assistant. "Get Ava Brooks on a video call. Now." That afternoon, Ava sat calmly in her office at the bank branch when the video call began. Ronald's face appeared on the screen, cold, sharp, and clearly annoyed. "Ava," he said without greeting, "I've been reviewing your recent actions, and frankly, I have concerns." Ava looked at him, her face calm. "I'm listening," she replied. Ronald leaned forward. "You're turning our bank into a charity. You're focusing on emotions, stories, and respect, instead of business. This isn't a school for lost souls. It's a financial institution." Ava stayed silent for a moment. Then she replied gently, "A bank is built on trust, Mr. Gray. And trust begins with respect." He frowned. "I don't care about feelings. I care about numbers." Ava reached into her drawer and pulled out a printed report. She held it up to the screen. "Then look at this," she said. "Customer satisfaction is up by 48%. New accounts have doubled. Complaints have dropped to almost zero." Ronald narrowed his eyes. "Still, you're making us look weak. Too soft. That's not the image we want." Ava's voice grew stronger. "Maybe it's time we ask what kind of image actually helps people." The call ended, but the tension didn't. 2 days later, Ava received an official letter from head office. It said she had to stop all community outreach programs. No more free training. No scholarships. No new hires from underprivileged groups. Just standard banking procedures. Ava sat in silence for a long time. Her heart was heavy. She had worked so hard to build something good. Now they wanted her to tear it all down. That evening, she stood alone in the dark lobby of the bank, thinking, was it worth it? Should she just follow orders and keep her job? Or fight, and risk losing everything? She closed her eyes and thought of the young man in the hoodie, the woman with the torn bag, the maid who smiled after being treated with kindness. And she remembered her mother's words. Respect yourself, even when others don't. The next morning, Ava walked into the bank and called a staff meeting. Everyone gathered in silence, sensing something serious. She looked at them with calm eyes. "I have to tell you something," she said. "Head office sent me a letter. They want us to stop everything we started." Gasps filled the room. They don't want community outreach. No scholarships. No programs for people like us. Tears appeared in some eyes. Anger in others. But Ava continued, "I will not stop." Everyone looked up. "I didn't come here to be safe. I came here to make a change. If they fire me, so be it. But I won't betray what we've built together." There was a long silence. Then the receptionist, the same one who once whispered about Ava's hair, stepped forward. "We're with you," she said. Then the young teller who helped the maid stood up. "You believed in us. Now we believe in you." One by one, every staff member stood up. "We'll do this together," someone said. "We're not afraid anymore." Ava smiled, her eyes full of quiet pride. That night, something unexpected happened. A customer posted on social media about how the bank had treated them with kindness and respect. The post went viral. People started sharing stories of how this one branch had helped them. Single mothers, street vendors, students. The internet exploded with support for Ava Brooks and her team. News reporters came. Radio shows talked about it. And suddenly, the small local bank became a national symbol of hope. At head office, Ronald Gray was furious. But the CEO of the entire banking company called Ava directly. "I've seen what's happening," the CEO said, "and I want to visit your branch next week." Ava's heart skipped a beat. This was bigger than she imagined. As she ended the call, she looked out the window at the evening sky. Her voice was soft, but full of strength. "Let them come. We'll show them what real banking looks like." Outside the small bank branch, camera vans lined the street. Reporters held microphones. People stood in groups, waiting. Some held signs that read, "Respect is powerful. We stand with Ava. This bank believed in me." Inside the bank, the staff stood straight and proud. They wore simple uniforms, but their faces glowed with something stronger than pride. Purpose. At exactly 10:00 a.m., a black car stopped in front of the building. The door opened. A man in a dark blue suit stepped out. He was tall, older, with silver hair and kind but serious eyes. It was Mr. Daniel Kerr, the CEO of the entire national banking chain. He walked toward the doors, and Ava Brooks stepped out to greet him. "Good morning, Mr. Kerr," Ava said with a calm smile. "Good morning, Ms. Brooks," he replied, looking around. "Quite a crowd out here." "They're just people who were never seen before," Ava said softly. Mr. Kerr looked at her for a moment and gave a small nod. "Let's go inside." The staff stood quietly as the CEO walked in. He greeted each one with a handshake, asking their names. Then he sat with Ava in her office. For an hour, they talked. Ava told him everything: why she made those changes, what the community needed, and why respect mattered more than just money. She showed him real stories, photos of people who now had accounts, jobs, scholarships, letters from customers who said this bank had changed their lives. When she finished, Mr. Kerr was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Ava, when I first heard about you, I thought maybe you were a dreamer." Ava smiled softly. "I am. But now," he continued, "I see that you're also a builder. You didn't just dream. You made something real." He stood up and looked her in the eyes. "I came here today to see if your methods could work." He smiled. "And now I want to take them nationwide." The news broke the next morning. Bank CEO approves Ava Brooks' vision for all branches. Ava's picture was everywhere, on news channels, websites, and magazine covers. But she didn't feel like a star. She felt like a servant, a helper, a teacher. And that was enough. 2 weeks later, Ava was called to the main headquarters. There, in a grand meeting room, she was introduced to a room full of board members and executives. They asked her to give a speech. She stood behind a small wooden podium, her voice clear and strong. "I'm not a hero," she began. "I'm just someone who refused to look away." She told them about the whispers, the rude jokes, the customers no one wanted to serve. She told them how kindness made more impact than pressure, how people want to be treated like humans, not numbers. When she finished, the room gave her a standing ovation. That day, Ava was offered a new title, Chief People and Community Officer, the first role of its kind in the bank's history. She would now help every branch become a place of dignity and respect. Back at her local branch, the staff held a small farewell party. It wasn't fancy, just homemade food, handwritten cards, and hugs. Tears flowed, but they were happy tears. "You taught us how to see people," one staff member whispered. "No," Ava said. "You taught yourselves." I just lit the first candle. A month later, Ava stood in front of a new building. It wasn't a bank. It was a community learning center, built with help from the bank and local donors. It offered free classes in finance, job training, and even emotional support. The sign outside said, "The Ava Brooks Center for Respect and Opportunity." People lined up to register, and as Ava walked through the doors, she smiled. Because she knew something important. Her story didn't end at the bank.